Good morning, and welcome to my hometown of Chicago, Illinois, and welcome to B2B Online. And we are broadcasting live from the downtown Chicago Marriott Hotel directly from B2B Online. And I could give you a good morning Vietnam. That's a little overkill. So we'll just kind of stick with a hearty good morning here. But today, we're going to talk about a very important topic, navigating the new normal. And that takes the forms of, takes the shape of many, many things. But to anybody who is in B2B e-commerce, who is in the trenches every single day with customer experience, then you are navigating the new normal. And I like to quote two things to open up our little show here. One, which is, to borrow a phrase from Bob Dylan, may we live the times that are changing. My next one is the old Chinese proverb, may we live in interesting times. And by that I mean because in 25 years of covering B2B e-commerce and B2B and distribution in general, I have never seen the pace of digital activity and the need and the motivation and the requirements for it change so fast. And so we have a lot to unpack here. I mean, in today's day and age, you've got 75% of most buyers want some form of digital interaction with all the distribution channels they deal with. And we have a guest that we're just excited to have on our show today, who knows this topic inside and out. And we are happy to welcome Stu Tisdale, the Senior Vice President and Chief Experience Officer from ADI Global. So Stu, tell us about yourself and your role at ADI, if you would.
Sure, Mark, and thank you for having me, and great to see you again. I'm the Chief Digital Experience Officer at ADI. So in my role, I lead the company's e-commerce operations, so our development teams, DevOps, our merchandising and digital marketing teams, and also several of the technology and AI-enabled systems that power our commercial experience.
And so we have a lot to unpack here. And what's interesting, Stu, and why we're so excited to have you here is that this is what you do every single day on a very broad scale. And there's been a lot of digital change and a lot of experience change at ADI Global. We're going to unpack that. But the other thing is, we're going to give some practical takeaway best practice advice for all distributors out there and all the people who are going to watch this show from your perspective, like what they can do better, how you've experienced a few things at ADI Global. So we're going to jump into that in just a second here. But before we do that, we have a couple of upcoming programs here we think that you folks need to know about. So the first one, why we kind of queue up here, is that we are excited, and I think we're more than excited, to bring back Applied AI for Distributors June 23rd through June 25th at the Chicago Marriott Hotel. And this is where AI and the industry come to talk about the serious execution, the serious best practices, the serious onboarding and rollout of how AI is literally transforming the pace of business and how we do business across all the channels in distribution. So this is not just a show that features the big companies. If you look at who we have coming, we have Grainger, we have DSG, we have Graybar, we have all the big companies there, but at the same time, and I think most importantly, we have distribution companies across all verticals, all segments, all sales, and they're there for a reason. They come to learn about how AI can be put in place at their particular organization across the board. It's not just sales, it's how it applies to the organization, to the business side, to the tech side. And so I think as we get into the show here, this is the place to be. And you can register today by going to applieddistributors.com or scan the QR code in the bottom of your right-hand screen here, and I'll take you right there. But you know what? We're going to sell out here pretty quick. We encourage you to be there. And the reason we encourage you to be there is because the staff at DSG knows distribution inside and out. And that insider information, that deep knowledge of the industry has allowed us to bring together just a roster of speakers that will speak to every single aspect of AI across the distribution spectrum. We're welcoming. We have keynotes here from Graybar, and Dana Stone is going to talk about the marketing impact. We have Grainger talking about what's the latest and greatest with them, and how they see AI rolling across the biggest public distribution company. But at the same time, Stu is joining us on a panel to talk about best practices, what you do, how you get it right. And he's on there with, the president of Summit Electric, Dwayne Roberts, and then Natalie, who's a hands-on practitioner from Milwaukee. So I bring those speakers out only to highlight not only their expertise, but the breadth and depth of what we hope to do and will do with our show. And, not to be missed are the workshops, especially featuring Brian Hopkins, the COO of Distribution Strategy Group, a recognized thought leader in AI in his own right, who's talking about the AI roadmap that all organizations can take a look at, implement, and then go right back to work and put it in there. So be there or be square. We want you there. We also want to kind of tell you about the software side of Distribution Strategy Group, because we have 3 sets of software tools and software databases that are looking to help grow aspects of your distribution business. And that is Customer Experience RX, that's Employee Experience RX, and that's Demand RX. So we suggest that if you are serious about optimizing experience, employee experience, and frankly, demand, these software programs and our databases and consultations tied to that are worth bearing a look. And of course, you can find more on that at distributionstrategy.com/software. And, we have a lot of thought leadership just coming up here.
Epicor Prism, embedded into Profit 21, does more than retrieve data. It provides analysis too. Busy execs use Prism to provide insights and recommendations. For example, a COO might select a chart and ask, how can I increase profit margins? Prism responds. She might ask, anything I should be concerned with? Prism calculates, analyzes, and brings insight quickly and efficiently. You can expect informed decision-making, more accurate forecasts, and operational efficiency.
All right, well, let's get right to it. Stu, you are in the trenches every single day with this, but I don't think the pace have changed. I don't think as I mentioned this at the top of the hour here, I don't think I've seen the pace of change for digital experience and e-commerce go this motivated, this fast, this holistic in 25 years of covering this. And so, some stats to throw out here. Some of the stats, including some of the ones we do here at our own DSG research, 70% of all digital experiences in a B2B world are digitally driven. That doesn't mean that every single thing is a transaction of the website, but it does mean that everything that touches those 7 to 11 channels that B2B buyers engage with, a B2B buyer, it's digitally driven. And that is speeding up, not slowing down. The reason is it's no longer just single procurement or supply chain managers doing the execution on this for their organization. It is teams. Those teams are 3, 5, 7 members, and they are multifunctional, cross-organizational, all coming together to find out if you, that distribution company or that B2B seller, have what they want. And they are a discriminating bunch, as I think you're well aware.
Mm-hmm.
They will vet you 60 days prior to maybe even giving you a transaction, because they want to see, do you have the experience? Do you have the channels? Can you support their specifications? And with that, let's talk about AI. Let's talk about digital at ADI Global. So can you talk about the role digital plays at ADI today? Roughly how big is it a part of your revenue? And what's behind the increasing importance, do you think?
Yeah, sure, Mark. ADI has got presence in 14 countries. So we've got a transactional website, a mobile app, and our transactional e-commerce revenue, it's a little bit less than 1/3 of our total revenue. However, I think that's probably the measure that attributes the least amount of importance to our digital experience. What's more important is the usage. And professional buyers oftentimes are researching product specifications, pricing, inventory availability, or just using general workflows. And that type of digital engagement, when we look at our customer base and our weekly revenues, is about 3 times what comes through the shopping cart. So it has become an integral part of the regular B2B buyer journey. And measuring transactional revenue is what's on the sales ledger, but the contribution and value that a good digital experience can drive, you got to look at it from an engagement standpoint.
Well, from the engagement standpoint, 1/3 of all sales is nothing to sneeze at. But could you talk about how you've seen the experience change over the last 2 or 3 years to help you scale to that number, Stu?
Sure.
A lot going on there. Can we unpack it just a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things you mentioned up front around the growing importance of being always on, having a business that's always on, information that's always accessible, has led me to see a few things. And first and foremost, transaction speed is by far one of the most important things to do in B2B. Our customers want to get in, they want to get out, and they want to get it when we said they would get it. They want to get it on time. And so prioritizing transaction speed, I think, is a really important aspect of the experience. Second is product discovery. Business buyers generally come to your experience knowing what they want, and they expect to be able to find it relatively quickly. Any misstep there creates friction and creates a lost opportunity. So the data that you talked about earlier, I think, checks out with, what I see on a day-to-day basis. The importance is growing, and I do think it's accelerating. And so you're going to have to prioritize certain pieces of your experience more than others. Product discovery, transaction speed, and just making your data available at all times of the day and night to whoever needs it.
Well, can we step back for just a second, Stu? Could you talk about ADI Global and your product mix and your customer base? And then what does a typical B2B buyer at ADI Global look like today? What do they want most, and what do they expect most from the website and their whole experience?
Sure. Our customers are professional installers, professional integrators, and ADI packages up smart building and smart home technology and makes it available for sale to professional integrators through several channels, stores, e-commerce, and we add value through a range of digital services. Our customers are installing during the day, and they're doing a lot of their research and their planning at night and outside of normal business hours. So it's extremely important to have pricing that's accurate, that's available all hours of the day. Inventory that is refreshing constantly so our customers can have confidence in our fulfillment times. And then workflows. Now, are you able to enable workflows after hours? Certainly, you can always call one of our stores and ask for a quote, but when it's after hours, how can you get that workflow? How can you initiate that workflow in a way that you don't have to wait for the store to open the next day? And so the always-on, 24/7 nature of business buyers, and especially our professional integrators, is something that we really prioritize.
I don't even like the term B2B commerce anymore because I think that's archaic. I think it's digital commerce. But for a lot of years, how a company defined B2B commerce was who's coming to my website, what are they buying? It was all about the transaction. Now, I think it's all about the experience. So a typical ADI buyer, fitting the specs you just mentioned, are they coming because they know what they want and they expect you to have it with all the support tools to make that a holistic experience, and in the field especially? Or it's more so where they're counting on you to educate them on what they need, or the other tools to support the part they want to get?
Yeah, and we believe, and we don't know, but we think based on the data we have that most of our visitors and customers are there to carry out a task. Now, that task could be paying an invoice. That task could be creating a project list for next week's project or next month's project, or that task could be doing a transaction. That task could also be downloading technical specs in order to make sure that the installation is done correctly. We certainly believe that they come to perform a task, but that task can vary from carrying out a transaction to acquiring information to initiating a workflow.
So your customers have been asking more of you digitally. They want a more comprehensive experience. Can you talk about the journey of that for just a little bit? How do they approach you and tell you at ADI Global what they want online next? And then how do you decipher that into what's going to become the priority for enhancing the customer experience?
That's a great question, and it's something that I'm proud that I feel we are much more mature than we were a few years ago. So we are very frequently engaging with our customers in usability studies, in UX research work, but also just in terms of how do you rate doing business with ADI, across all channels. The great thing about business-to-business distribution is you have these long-lived customer relationships, and they are just interacting with you on a daily or weekly basis. And so they know what will make their job easier. And so they don't hesitate to tell you what will make their job easier. And we value that so much. So we both have, I think we've got a good qualitative process through UX research and usability studies. And we have a really, really good quantitative process as well to bring those things together. And we're lucky, that we have such an engaged customer base that, wants us to get better.
It's hard to generalize about an entire B2B market that's multi-trillion, but I'll take a stab at it anyway, which is just as a journalist and reporter writing about this stuff daily for 25 plus years, the pace of change of what buyers want the suite of anything from more product planning tools, financing tools, product recommendations, on down the line. I mean, that has accelerated greatly in the last 3 years, I think. I mean, that's a pace of change I don't personally think is going to change. But having said that, you've been doing a lot of changes at ADI Global. So for instance, you've made a number of product page enhancements that drove higher add to cart and conversion rates. Can we talk about what specifically moved the needle, Stu, and what are you working on next?
Yeah. Within the last 6 months, we really looked at our whole transaction flow, like from discovery throughout the checkout. And for the last couple of years, we've worked a lot on product discovery, and we've implemented some AI-enabled search tools. What we hadn't done is really looked at our product detail pages, our cart, and our checkout. And we had not refreshed our cart and checkout in several years. And so our product detail pages now have very detailed omni-channel inventory visibility between distribution centers and stores. We're also able to show estimated delivery dates that are informed by our own historical transactions. They utilize an internal AI model to do that. And then our cart speed and our checkout speed, we've redesigned the UX, and it's just a much faster end-to-end experience. And we measure these things, and we feel like customers are liking it and rewarding us for it.
These enhancements you just mentioned, though, do you see them as something unique to ADI Global, or on the flip side, is this frankly the table stakes that if you're going to be in the B2B game online today, this is what you need?
Well, that's a great question, and it's something that certainly we talk about at the leadership level very frequently, which is what's really table stakes today. And what's differentiating. And so, the challenging part being in the B2B space is keeping pace with what the table stakes experience is, requires a really talented team, and it requires good strategy, and it requires you to prioritize the right projects, because you can't go and do everything, right? And so I would agree, and especially the time frame of the last 3 years, the expectation has been heightened, and table stakes is probably where we spend most of our energy today, in addition to building differentiating features.
Can we just take maybe one or two of the features you're just talking about here, these product enhancements, and then maybe kind of dig into that just a little bit? What I want to ask you, Stu, is what's the process? How does the process begin? On your team, who gets involved? How long is the build period, the kick the tires testing period, then bring that thing to market? So I always like those kinds of perspectives, because I think that kind of shows the timeline for what a lot of distribution companies are facing in their own organization when it comes to enhancing the digital experience. So maybe we can unpack one of those experiences at ADI Global.
Development cycles should be getting shorter, right? And that requires a lot of change management, requires good process, rigor, leadership. So, our process in general starts with two basic exercises. One is quantitative and analytics based. We watch sessions, we look at rich analytics. I personally watch a lot of sessions myself. We do experience maps. Then we will build some prototypes for large, t-shirt size, large and XL features. We'll build some prototypes, and we will do both the quantitative and qualitative UX research, and then we will bring it into our development cycle. And we're by no means perfect at it, but we are looking, we try to release features as soon as we can, get them to market, ship them as soon as we can. By no means, this is a journey. By no means are we at a spot where we're all happy. But that's the way we think about it.
You and I could sit here and tell war stories with e-commerce the live long day. But I got to tell you, it was not that long ago where if you were talking to a typical distribution company or B2B seller for anything kind of e-com related, the timeline was a year for something complex. And then, we had to fast track down that to 6 months. That was only 2 years ago. And that was about the dawn where we first began to kind of see the aspects of what AI was doing to the digital side of the experience and the commerce side. But the turnaround time frames are much, much tighter. But you mentioned AI search just a minute ago. Can we talk about that for just a sec? What was the rollout there? What did you do with AI search? And then how did you come to enhance it with that? And then what was the process for that is my core question for you.
Well, sure. It started with listening to customers. And what I've learned about product discovery, especially with businesses, is that rarely are they going to give you credit, but you are going to hear from them when it doesn't meet their expectations. So when complaints stop, you generally can feel like you're starting to meet their expectations. Product discovery and commerce search it's the front door into getting an order. And it's complex and it requires some really strong project planning to go execute that. So, we went through the process of a formal RFP and, the vendors that were submitting their responses, had to do some demos and use our own data. We wanted to see how the experience looked. Ultimately, it was, those are more Excel type projects. Those are probably at least a year before you're getting something out to market. But especially when it comes to search, and if you're launching a new search technology, you really want to let the technology learn and not try to play, and not rebuild the old state with the new technology. And we did that, and I don't think we regret it. I think that the system has learned and has done very well.
Personally, I think there's kind of a two-edged sword to the customer experience. One, of course, the technology is paramount, like you just mentioned. But you know what? I think a typical B2B seller organization is only as good as the data they have to work with, and more importantly, take it back one step down the food chain here, your suppliers. So if that data is not coming in from your suppliers in a timely fashion to enable more real-time, consistent digital experience on the pricing side or the experience side, how do you deal with that, Stu? I mean, how do you work with your suppliers or your manufacturers to get the information in to then put it into the database to format, to feed out to the new AI-driven search? Can we kind of talk about this, kind of the back channel for a second or two here?
Absolutely. One of the most challenging business processes in wholesale distribution, which is acquiring vast amounts of product data from third-party suppliers. There are really three ways to get product data. One is you get it from the manufacturer, which is probably the best way. Number two is you get it from an aggregator, so you pay for it. And then number three is you create it yourself. All of the above approach. We don't singularly focus on one method, but acquiring product data, it was an issue, or it was difficult 15 years ago when I started my career in distribution, and it is still something that we spend a lot of time and energy thinking about today. My take is that some of the modern AI tools that are out on the market and at a show like B2B Online are making it a lot easier to go do that at scale. And then also some of the more modern PIM systems, some of the leading PIM systems, have really done a good job at building in data standardization, data fill technology, and just other workflows and AI-enabled insights that are going to help distributors or manufacturers run better product data.
So in the last 3 years, it's been quite the journey at ADI Global. You've put a lot of change in. Can we talk about kind of what's next, what you're working on now?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it a little bit earlier. The B2B buyer, whether it's at ADI or other sites, generally comes into the experience to perform a task. And sometimes that task is to buy something. Oftentimes that task is to do other things that are part of the overall buying journey. And so, a lot of focus tends to get put on the transaction. And I think we've done a good job focusing on that in the last 3 years. More focus is going to be on the broader set of tasks that will enable our customers to run more profitable and efficient businesses. So that challenge, it never ends, and I don't ever see like a fixed finish line.
So you're taking these enhancements like AI search, which I think is just fascinating myself. But my question to you is, with all of this new data that you're using to upgrade the experience, to upgrade with this new technology, to deliver a more holistic customer experience, my question to you is, what have you learned that surprised you, that maybe you assumed or didn't know kind of going in to the development of something like a new AI search tool on the far side? Typically, what surprises you that maybe you didn't know before, that now that you know it, it'll help you for your next product enhancement?
Yeah, I think like AI-enabled technology delivers the most value is when you're trying to solve a problem, and we were talking about product search, but when you're trying to solve a problem where, trying to do it the old way and scale is cost prohibitive. We could tune Elasticsearch, to the nth degree, but it's going to take investment. And getting to a point of scale is very difficult. So, that was one of the things that that particular project proved to me, was that you've got to go after the big challenges that are somewhat cost prohibitive to solve the old way. Secondly, when you have large data sets that refresh frequently and they don't really age, that's a great use case for AI technology. And then third, where small changes can have a big impact. And so, when you think about product discovery, it's your 80-20 rule. You certainly have an area of products and categories and suppliers where most of the search is being done. And so if you can improve that experience, generally that is a multiplier effect.
Now, I've known you for a long time, and I think you know something of me. So you know I love to mix metaphors. I just do. So here's two for you. AI, as applied to search, is hand in glove. It's not apples and oranges. But just taking those mixed metaphors as a premise of this question, which is, can we step back and just in general, as an SVP and Chief Experience Officer, Stu, what is the overall impact on AI today across digital commerce? I mean, it's evolving. It's in certain parts of the transaction, or it's in certain parts of the equations. Just a little holistic view of how you see AI being applied to B2B buying and digital commerce. I'm just kind of curious where you see the timeline at.
Well, I'll go back to what I said before. Where can you make small changes and have big impact? Where's relevance extremely important? Is not an intent aren't always understood by traditional systems. So think about product recommendations. We've got several different types of professional installers. They might install the same general type of technology, but they also have sub-specializations. And so making sure that product recommendations are tuned, really finely tuned to what that customer is interested in is really important. So I would tend to say that, where relevance and understanding intent are very important is a great place to go.
So has AI in general made product rollout and timelines faster and better? I mean, taking the traditional 6 months down to days or weeks. Have you seen that type of impact that AI is making on the changes that you're making?
Well, I certainly see the potential.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I think we're very early in the maturity curve of some of the tools, like Claude assisted code and different things that are happening in that space. We're certainly early in the maturity curve. I certainly think it has the potential, and we're excited about it, and we're looking into it.
And so, ADI, of course, is not exactly small, as we both know here. So ADI has more than 75,000 active commercial customers at 256, that's a lot, 256 locations. So at that scale, how do you decide which AI use cases get funded versus which ones get maybe put down the line somewhat?
Yeah. I think there are some very exciting use cases across all functions, whether that's sales, operations, e-commerce, and just marketing. I'll go back to something I said a little bit earlier, but where you've got large data sets that don't age and refresh frequently, I think is a great use case. So quoting is a great use case. Demand planning and assortment optimization are great use cases. So one, it's really got to kind of fit the filter. Second, is it something that is available commercially and where all distributors have the same problem to solve, right? All distributors want to maximize assortment. All distributors want to do demand planning better. So in those cases, you typically may want to look out in the industry because there'll be several providers and you'll benefit from all the industry innovation. You have a little bit of a more bespoke problem that's unique to like your industry or to your buyer. I mean, you may want to look at building those models yourself and investing in data science. Both of these options have trade-offs, but we've done both and have been happy with the results.
Jonathan, one of the co-founders of DSG, has a PhD in this, and he is doing a lot of groundbreaking work on the agentic side of this. So not to get too far off stream, but I do want to kind of talk about the agent role and what's happening with B2B in general. I love covering what I call the tectonic plates. What's big tech doing? Google, Amazon, Microsoft, OpenAI, all those guys, right? So earlier this year, maybe even going to last year, on the B2C side, it's a coming. Agents are coming. Can't avoid it. Got to come. And then if you look on the B2C side at the shift in traffic from traditional search to AI search, boy, I mean, those numbers were pretty sure to kind of look at. Now, if you step back and talk holistically about the agent world for B2B, it's actually a much more suited world to the agent AI e-commerce model. And if it does happen, it's going to be very large transactions across very large organizations. But that is a vision or a statement of where this might go. From the perspective of ADI Global, what's your thinking about agent and agentic? Are you seeing it? Is it something that you're looking at or actually working on? So yeah, if you could talk about just how you see agentic for a minute or two, I think there's some good perspective there people would like to know about.
Sure. Well, we certainly see the potential. We are very much in learning mode, which is, I think, the right stage to be in right now. That's why, we come to events like B2B Online, is to see what's new in the industry, what technology is out there, talk to other practitioners. But I'd say we're in learning mode right now. There are a few organic efforts happening. We will certainly accelerate that pace at some point. We're early on the adoption curve, and I think the best place to be right now is experimenting and learning, and give this another 6 months to a year to kind of mature.
So how many product enhancements experience enhancements have you put out in the last 18 months, Stu? Was that 3, 5, or what's the actual number there of all the tools you've mentioned so far?
Just in terms of like shipping new features?
Yes. I mean, how many features in the last, let's say, year, 18 months?
It's hard to estimate. I would redirect you to kind of more of the more paradigm shifting changes in the experience. The search experience is better. We've redesigned our product detail pages, our carts faster, our checkouts faster. So there's been a lot of Excel type improvements.
There are a lot of companies out there in B2B and in distribution who are not as far along or as frankly digitally savvy or with the budget that ADI Global has. So what's the best practice you could recommend to distributors about how to replicate, how to prioritize, and then seek out the proper funding they might need for what they need to do to their customer experience? I mean, any best practice you can share for folks out there?
Yeah, it certainly starts with a great executive leadership team. The digital experience at ADI would never be where it is today without the strong support both of our executive team and my executive peers and the buy-in. And it's so my one piece of advice would be just build really strong buy-in with your executive peers, because you need all functions to come together to execute these things. From a business case standpoint, some of these business cases take 2 to 3 years to really show, return in a traditional sense. And so, when you go to buy technology, you certainly want to partner with companies that are willing to invest with you up front, like a third-party technology company that's willing to, give you step-up pricing and give you advantageous terms and, access to access to technology for free, try before you buy, those types of things. So it's really important to have executive support, great peer relationships, but also when you're utilizing third-party technology, you got to select the right partner.
And how do you? I mean, that's a fundamental question, but an important one. How do you go about selecting the right partner?
Well, it starts with strong requirements writing. I would recommend, formal RFP and evaluation sessions, and then certainly the prospective technology partner should prototype the experience with your data. Because if you find out that, well, our data really isn't built for this type of technology, we have our own data problems, our data readiness isn't there, that can help you avoid making an investment that wouldn't pay off soon.
Coming back to this, your AI enhanced search. Maybe that's the starting point here. But make a long story short, AI driven tools are basically reshaping how your contractors, I think you mentioned, are buying and viewing their experience at ADI Global. So, can you give us a concrete example of where AI is delivering a measurable return today, or a better direction, let's say?
Well, I'll go back to I think the challenge that most distributors have in acquiring product data, standardizing it, filling it, ensuring its accuracy, its completeness, is this day in, day out, never ending activity. We'll always be doing it. Some of the AI tools out there have allowed us to, scale that up faster, refresh the catalog faster, and that ultimately has delivered a better on-site experience.
It's interesting with developing these new enhancements. 2 quick war stories. There is an individual I've known in distribution he's been at it for 45 years. He just retired. But when they first began launching their e-commerce adventure, he went into his CEO and he said, "You know what? We got to be doing this. We have to kind of get going here. We're behind the 8 ball." All of that. The CEO says, "Okay, good. You're going to head it up." So be careful what you wish for. My point is, what they thought was going to be a 2-year journey became a 4-year journey because they went out, did all the due diligence for the right front end, did everything by the book. They put it in, ready to roll it out, and guess what? They had a cranky old clunky ERP system with 200,000 SKUs that were not ready for prime time, and it took them 18 months going back and redoing the entire taxonomy. So that data question, feeding the front end, took them almost 3.5 to 4 years to get from A to B versus 2. That's just an example of how complex this can get. Or another fastener company, distribution, been around since 1963. 60% of all the manufacturers go through them. They launched a marketplace. They thought they could be live 18 months. This guy was like yourself, a veteran, and knew it, and they built the model in 18 months. It took them another 18 months to roll out. The problem, the data, because they had 60% of the suppliers flowing product through them on the e-commerce side, but the marketplace model is entirely different until they got onboarding for the suppliers done, which was different by big to different to middle. It just took that long. So I bring up those two anecdotes for a reason, which is now we're in the era of AI. So is AI helping to solve fundamentally difficult problems like the kind I just mentioned, where your original timeline might have been 18 months or a year, but instead, now you got a data problem. So we have to go back and fix that. Or a marketplace problem. The technology was ready, the data wasn't. So that project got rolled back. Is AI helping to facilitate any faster rollout of the problem solving and the complexity to bring off these large scale customer experiences like the kind we're talking about at ADI Global?
I believe it will in time. I think it is maybe a little bit too early in the journey to say it's delivering our ability to solve problems at a higher velocity. I certainly see as some of the solutions mature and as, you can use, for example, code development, right? And there are productivity tools that can help that whole process move faster. There's automation for QA. There's lots of different things that can help. We are early in the adoption cycle for that. I certainly see the potential for the technology to allow us to move faster, but I still think we're early days.
I like that early days, but the potential, you see the potential in a short-term type of way, Stu, or at ADI Global, do you see it like being eventually, next, I don't know what the timeline is at ADI Global, but I mean, short-term versus long-term, the potential we're talking about here.
Well, we would try to get the value as soon as we possibly could. I tend to think in 3 to 5 year time horizons. And, certainly looking out the next 24 to 36 months, I'm excited about the potential. And I do think it's real, and it will benefit the business long term.
One of the fun things about working at DSG is you're working with these really creative, innovative, thought leadership kind of people. My point is, between Ian and Jonathan and Brian, these guys know AI cold. They know where it's going. They know what the problems are, the solutions are, and where the next implementation is heading for all of this. Me, I'm an observer. I'm a reporter. So I like talking to people out there in the trenches, kind of like yourself, getting a sense of where AI is going. Using that as a bit of a backdrop, the rollout of AI across B2B and distribution, sure personalization, sure marketing, sure customer service, sure supply chain, sure procurement. To me, that was kind of the opening 5 of where at least I was seeing from a reporter standpoint, AI being rolled out across different parts of the enterprise. But you're running a very large enterprise. So can you talk about where you saw AI make the most difference at ADI Global first? And then as you view, your view of this and the evolution, where do you see it next? I don't know, marketing's next, or supply chain is even more next. So can you talk about how you see it, where you applied it first, and kind of where that's going next?
Yeah, I talk about my own experience. Where we first saw it really impact the customer experience was just delivering better search results, making the product discovery process more relevant, and having that tune over time. So that was, probably where we saw the first big impact. Now, going forward, I think there's lots of potential use cases, especially from an experience standpoint. Outside of my own function, maybe a little bit less comfortable talking about that, but within the digital experience, there are obvious use cases for question and answer, researching technical specs, getting answers to complex technical questions. And so, those are things that, we're looking into.
And are the timelines getting shorter for when you have to do something with all of this? Your customer, you're demanding it, or it just makes sense because you spotted the problem with your team internally and now you've got the problem identified and the tools to do it. But are the timelines for this kind of implementation getting shorter, or it's going to depend upon what that project is from an experience standpoint?
So I think with more organizational experience and readiness, if the data readiness is strong, the implementations will be shorter. Success begets success as your team develops experience on what to do and what not to do. The shipping timelines, the timeline to ship the actual product and the experience will get shorter over time, but there is a learning curve. and you certainly have to get started, and you want to invest in people who could be there for the long term on the team, because they need to understand how the solution is built, how to tune it, how to optimize it, and be with it over long time periods. Big risk is to exclusively use a third party to stand up any type of AI-enabled technology, because you really need to have some of the expertise in-house to run the models, to tune them. So I would recommend, if you're going to use a third party, certainly have some of your own development staff partnered in on the project, so you know how the solution's built.
I think we both know there is just a thirst for quality information on how to do this with AI as relates to the transaction, as relates to the experience out there in distribution land. But not everybody is as advanced as ADI Global. So I want to talk about prerequisites so far and what you've got to have kind of coming in. I mean, a lot of companies are frankly still getting started. They don't know what they don't know, to borrow a consultant's phrase in the industry here. Talk about, if you would, from an ADI Global perspective, the prerequisites that you need to have in place for either AI in general or a specific tool like your AI enhanced product search. I mean, what do you have to have as your roadmap and your requisite strategy going in before you can even get to building what a first generation thing might look like?
Well, you need to have a product owner. It should be very clear who the product owner is for that technology. Number two, having a great definition of the problem to be solved. Do we all have agreement on the problem to be solved? And have we qualitatively researched that? Can we prove it quantitatively? Problem definition, I would argue, is one of the most important steps when you're starting down this journey. And then you'll hear everyone talk about data readiness. That is it's an organizational requirement. Are you a mature organization with data? Most companies probably say no, but they're on that journey. I mean, are you on the journey to being more mature, or are you just operating as you always have?
Now, we began the hour, Stu, by talking about the changing customer experience and everything you've been doing with product enhancements at ADI Global. So a lot's changed in just the last year, 18 months, 2 years. So my question to you is, from the digital customer experience standpoint at ADI Global, it's holistic now? You've got your roadmap, you've got the journey, or you're looking at things that could change all of this inside the next year or so, depending upon the pace of change. So my fundamental question really is, how is the experience going to morph next? And what do you have to do from a digital perspective to keep ahead of that at ADI Global?
Great question. One of the reasons we come to these events is to constantly keep a pulse on what's changing. Every time we come, there's a couple aha moments. You want to see what new technology is out there. You want to see the new vendors that are here, talk to other practitioners. So if there's one thing that I'm sure of, is that we're going to always question the why behind everything. Why do we do it this way? Why does the customer want it this way? How could we do it better? If that's the way you lead, you will constantly be in a state of change. And so that's my commitment to my team and the company, is we're always going to be asking the why question. We're always going to be here at these events and trying to understand what's new, keeping a pulse of what's going on. And there's no doubt that in a year from now, if we get back together again, we'll be talking about, I'm sure, different things.
With staffing, though, in terms of finding the expertise that you need to do, not just AI enhancements, but experience enhancements in general, how are you finding the talent you need to pull off these objectives within the shorter timeframes we've been talking about here for the past 40 minutes or so? I mean, it's all in-house built. You have to kind of go to the outside world. There's a serious skills question, a talent question. A lot of distributing companies are asking themselves, where do I find these guys? So that question to you, where do you find the team to tackle this, and how do you train them?
Well, data science is an investment, and it can be a large investment. It can be a small investment to start, but data science in general is an investment, and talent is a big investment. Not surprising. There are lots of great third parties, and we do work with third parties. We work with some really talented staff augmentation firms. I tend to use an all of the above approach on this. We have our own internal talent. We also have found great talent in offshore environments. So it's really an all of the above approach. When it comes down to the technical skills, you've got to find it where you can get it. But from a business side, we really like to promote from within. And when we see our team members demonstrate certain behaviors that we know are important to thinking futuristically, thinking about what the customer wants, we try to move them into really important roles. We've done a great job of that at the company, and I'm really proud of that.
I got to tell you, this stuff is becoming very, very big. Literally just 3 blocks over at the Merchandise Mart, there's a very large B2B company, and they've gone from 300 support staff to 1,200, and most of those are working on AI. And what they have over there would rival anything you'd find out in Silicon Valley. So we're going to wrap up with our final question here, Stu, which is, how does AI factor into personalizing the experience differently for different customer segments?
Well, it's a huge driver. It's a huge enabler of personalization. So we serve a variety of different professional installers, professional integrators, and if you're installing a fire system or a video surveillance system or an access control system, your definition of a power supply is different. And so AI-enabled search technology helps you understand the intent better from segments of those buyers. So when someone said with an access control focused integrator wants a power supply, they get one that is relevant to access control. And the same thing with other categories. So it's a huge driver of search. Now, beyond that, content personalization, I think is really important to business buyers. You will turn off a buyer very quickly with unrelevant content. And so it's very important to have content precisely catered to both the segment of the customer segment and that persona that happens to be on site. And so AI can help enable that and do it at scale. It's tough to do at scale, but those are where some of I think the key personalization points are.
I got to tell you, Stu, we can't thank you enough. We have been visiting with Stu Tisdale live from B2B Online, talking about his experience as a Senior Vice President, Chief Experience Officer at ADI Global, who has been doing a lot of sea change across B2B e-commerce, digital commerce, AI, and customer experience. So Stu, we can't thank you enough for your expertise and taking time from your busy day to help us understand some of what's been going on in the industry today. And of course, we look forward to welcoming you back to Chicago to be a key panelist at our AI show, June 23rd through 25th at the Rosemont up there in Chicago. But thank you for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Excellent perspective. And now, just to talk a little bit about our upcoming pieces of content here, we have more to come, and we have more to come tomorrow. We think that you cannot get through tomorrow without tuning in and signing up for and logging into AI News and Gurus, because we're going to talk about one of the elephants in the distribution room, which is fraud and cybersecurity, and how that's becoming a much, much bigger problem across all of distribution. And if you think it's not here, think of what's happening in places like UNFFI or Cisco and some other very prominent hacks and fraud here. But we've got AI News and Gurus hosted by Brian Hopkins and Brooks Hamilton. And the very first part of this show is going to zero in on one of the leading experts on this particular topic, J. Michael Skiba, aka Dr. Fraud, Chief Operating Officer, President of International Fraud Training Group, who is in the front lines helping distribution companies every single day get ready to combat this problem. And his perspective is going to be eye-opening tomorrow. I interviewed him about 2 weeks ago. And if you think it's not a problem, boy, tune in, because this is something that distribution has to deal with and know about. And then afterwards, we're going to shift gears and talk to Mike Bauer, who's the CEO of Cavella, often known for his technology insight, talking about some key aspects of the customer journey as well as there. So that's tomorrow. We would like you to tune in. And then next up, we urge you to come back to us on May 13th for Emerging Digital Tools for Distributors, not to be missed by our sponsors from Epicor, Oro, and Supply, featuring Frank Hean, Aaron Sheehan, and Ryan Ayers, talking about the must-have tool set for emerging digital tools for distributors. So we welcome you to come in for those. We hope you'll attend us. And today, once again, Stu, thank you so much for taking time today. We want to thank B2B Online for having us at their show today. And stay tuned for more live updates from B2B Online as my colleague Josh talks to distribution companies across the spectrum this afternoon, getting a take on what's live from the show floors. Once again, thank you for tuning in today. I'm Mark Brohan, Executive Editor, and we will see you next time.